Still on intra-Africa trade, the African Export-Import Bank today in Cairo, Egypt, hosted the ambassadors of the African Union to a forum that is focused on trade, regional integration and investment. Let's take some excerpts from the president of Afrexim Bank as well as the executive vice president in charge of Intra-Africa Trade Bank. Let's listen.
We have remained resolute in our belief that Africa's transformation will only be driven primarily by Africans through deliberate investment. As a bank, we have been providing leadership in trade and investment promotion and see our role not just in financing transactions and the wider global Africa. In that regard, the bank has worked with key partners, namely African Union Commission on Trade and Investment. One of such significant steps we've taken was creating and implementing the Intra-African Trade Fair, a program conceived in 1963 by African leaders at the maiden meeting of the Organization of African Unity, but couldn't solidly take off until our recent efforts. Since its launch across Africa, building a strong network of African businesses and expanding the trade and investment links amongst Africans. The fair, backed by financing opportunity. The trade fair, held every 2 years, connects buyers and sellers across Africa, as well as investors to investment opportunities within the continent, and addresses the challenges posed by access to trade and market information. The first 3 inter-African trade fairs held in Egypt and South Africa attracted business deals worth over $120 billion in the aggregate and brought together over 4,500 of the trade fair to be held in over 2,000 exhibitors and over $44 billion in deals to be concluded. We all strongly encourage all stakeholders, their stands, their pavilions. 25 is the gateway to trade and investment opportunities in the continent. And I look forward to seeing you there. We are also making it possible for deals consummated through such linkages to be paid for in African currency. Payment for cross-border trade in infrastructure and other investment through the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System, or the PAPS. The government of Uganda can, for example, secure the services of a contract in the Ugandan shilling, which will be used to purchase the Egyptian pound to pay the Egyptian contractor. This can help in significantly reducing Africa's perennial external sovereign debt while closing the infrastructure financing gap on the continent. PASS will also make it possible for Africans to actively participate in the 29 stock, the trading and liquidity in the exchanges, and elevate the capacity of African businesses to raise capital from within the continent. Because through PAPS, an Egyptian can, for example, use Egyptian pounds to buy stock. That way, all stock exchanges will become continental exchanges and will be able to internally generate the capital to finance our businesses. The diversification of intra-African trade and investment payments through PAPS will hopefully pave the way for the emergence of a single currency trading platform, and will shortly launch a PAPS card that will make it possible for Africans to spend their national currencies wherever they travel to in Africa. So an Egyptian business person traveling to Zambia, services are currently available in 16 countries, including Egypt, where the business grew by 900% in 20. Our facility is designed to support the operation of African multinational corporations in multiple markets across between 2017 and 2023, and facilitated them to win and execute various contracts. A procurement and consortium contracting program was launched to enable African contractors to take advantage of the $60 billion of annual infrastructure spend on the continent. In June 2023, Afrexim Bank launched contractors to tenders and contracts across Africa. The digital platform provides a centralized and readily accessible channel to share information on the available investment opportunities across the continent, creating valuable networks. I wanted to also add here that through our program, the Egypt-Africa Trade Promotion Program, will trade and investment between Egypt and the rest of Africa. We increased that to $1 billion when the $500 million. We will further raise that to $5 billion. We can also provide you equity and quasi-equity capital to make it possible for you to do long-term investments wherever you want to make them in the continent of Africa. And the bank is also partnering with a RISE integrated industrial platform to develop industrial parks, export processing zones, and similar facilities across Africa.
People are so quick to tell you about how infrastructure deficit is one of the key obstacles or limitations in intra-African trade, because it is the roads that the goods will travel on. It is the electricity that will power the industries, but also powers our homes. It is the internet that connects us. And it is the bridges that link our communities and continents. For Africa, infrastructure is critical. Our infrastructure financing gap is estimated by UNECA and Alda Nepal to be around 130 to 180 billion every year. And this is not just statistics. It is a drain on our growth, a barrier to our integration, and a bottleneck to our global competitiveness. And although infrastructure investment across the continent is significant, what I'm trying to say that the spend on intra-African trade, the spend on infrastructure is now approximately $90 billion per annum, as cited by the African Development Bank. But we remain heavily dependent on African, or rather on foreign contractors. The reliance places sustainable pressure on limited foreign reserves and undermines the opportunity for Africans to lead and own their own development agenda. Foreign firms, particularly those from Asia and Europe, maintain a competitive edge, and that's in our own analysis because they are supported by capital. They are supported by their export credit agencies and global financial institutions, and that puts them on an elevated footing. It is no longer a fair playing ground, and that's because of the favorable conditions that they are able to offer the employers of the EPC services. Cheaper financing, longer tenors give them a significant structural advantage. That's why at the bank, Afrexim Bank, we introduced, and I think President Rama talked about it earlier in his statement, the Intra-African Engineer, Procure, Construct Contract Promotion Initiative. And it is determined to shift that paradigm of having foreign EPC contractors dominate the space.